Hey TV fans, Boardnell back with you. On this video I will be reviewing The Last of Us Season 2 Episode 7. The episode is called Convergence. It is of course the season finale and left off on a cliffhanger going into the next season, and that is of course because they have split Game 2 into 2 seasons. I heard a rumour recently that they were splitting it into 3 seasons, which seems a bit extreme, but I don't think that rumour's been confirmed. But something which has been confirmed by the end of this episode is that it appears as though Abby is going to play a bigger role in season 3, and that she's going to become a big part of the focus of the storyline. I think there was even a quote from Catherine O'Hara who said that in many ways season 3 is Abby's season, or Game 2 is very much it's Abby's story almost. And what we set up at the end of this episode is really setting the table for next season with Abby, because it's probably one of the few complaints I have is that we haven't seen more of Caitlin Denver. So she appears briefly at the end of this episode. It is a memorable scene with her, and she appeared in the first couple, but apart from that, not so much. And there's all these other characters who have been introduced, like Jeffrey Wright's character, who I'm guessing we will see more of in season 3 as well. But that's the only thing, is it's a shorter season and there's a lot of things that are set up, and there's certain characters and storylines or subplots which we need to wait and see how they play out in season 3, and hopefully going to get more of that stuff. But this is a very good finale. I think it's very gripping. It's a good Jesse episode, actually. Like I like a lot of the stuff we get with him. He shows some good development. There's some good direction once again, and it really reaches a big breaking point for Ellie in the episode. And one of the big takeaways is how this episode shows, I think, how she's really had to grow up fast, because what she's put through in this episode, she's already been through a lot in the storyline in general in the show, but yeah, by the end of this episode, she really goes through some rough stuff which no one should ever have to go through. But it's a good finale as I said. I think there's just 1 or 2 question marks over the season, and moving into season 3, I think it is a shame that it's a shorter season this time around. You would probably hope for at least 9-10 episodes, something like that. I know some people think they're milking it a bit by doing it that way. I actually don't think they are. I think it is more of a creative decision because of Game 2 and the way that game plays out. It always felt like more of a creative decision to me, because at the end of the day, it always felt like this show would get a pretty solid 3-4 season run anyway. But it's easy to see it that way, and maybe there is something to that. I guess a lot of times studios, when they know they're onto a hit, they will naturally do that. But as long as the writers don't treat it that way, then it's not such a big deal. And I think because of some of the writing issues this season, because of certain things that are in the game, there were things that the writers had to overcome and write around a little bit. And obviously it's a very divisive story and game, but I think they've done a really solid job overall. So getting into it, I like the opening scene, because the opening scene we see Jesse tending to Dina's wounds, and this is a good bit of payoff later on, because he can't get the arrow out the natural way, so he has to pull it through the other way. And we see him offering her a drink, and she says no, and he takes a pause, And at the time, I didn't really think much about this. I just thought, okay, it's her being quite stoic and brave. But it's actually quite a clever thing where it's a good character moment for Jesse, because he later brings this up to Ellie, and he's realised she didn't want a drink because she's pregnant, which is something I didn't think about in the scene, but it's a good sort of character moment for Jesse. Then he figures this out, and because he brings up to Ellie that, like, Dina never turns down a drink, so it shows how much he knows Dina as well. But that was a good example of, like, setting something up and a payoff. And it's quite a graphic little scene as well. Like, we see quite a bit of it, and it does cut away at one point with her screaming. And then Ellie comes back, and she's a bit cryptic about where she's been, but she goes in to see Dina. They have quite a nice little intimate type scene, and Ellie actually opens up to her about her torturing Nora for a long time, and we see, like, flashes of it, and she says almost that she just went into, like, machine-like mode, and that it was very easy. And again, this maybe plays a bit into Ellie, like, this rage just coming out of nowhere, and it almost takes her off guard, and maybe she's not so used to that in many ways, or maybe she hasn't quite gone that full on in the past, or that dark, and she just describes it, and she's very numb, because at one point Dina says, because Ellie says, well, I just left her there, I didn't kill her, which is a funny choice. Like, maybe she can bring herself to kill her, but she says, I just left her there, which in some ways is the cruel way to do it anyway. But Dina says maybe she deserved it, and then he says, well, what if she didn't? And again, one of the good things about these later episodes is how we're seeing a bit more morality come into Ellie's thoughts, and a bit more of questioning herself, whereas in the past I think she hasn't really thought so much about these things and the consequences, and she's always just, she was led by Joel for a long time. She also was quite individual in her own way, and was a lot more playful in the past. Like, we're definitely seeing a more considered character in many ways, and her question her actions and what is right and what is wrong. So it's another, like, really beautifully shot scene. So the next day, Jesse is very much, because Dina says we need to go home at one point, but you get the impression that maybe the next day they have other ideas, and Dina is up quite fast even though she's still wounded, and she agrees to hold down the fort basically as Ellie and Jesse go out they go out looking for Tommy, because they still need to find him before leaving. And that's when they have a little bit of a chat along the way, and Ellie questions how Jesse or how Jesse found the theatre. And this is a bit of a funny moment, because I know some people have picked up on this and said it was unlikely that they would have found the theatre anyway, and it's a big city, all the rest of it. It's not really something I questioned. I think it was explained quite well in the episode. But this stands out a little bit, because he does go through some details of how he found it, and he's quite thorough, and a lot of it can be maybe put down to just his instincts and how good he is at putting things together. But he explains it quite well in the scene, but again, it feels a little bit that maybe they've picked up on. Some people might question that, so we're going to put this into the dialogue. Maybe it just goes to Ellie's nature than she would question that. It seems a bit random that she's questioning it at that point. Like, I'm not sure why it really matters, but I'm not sure. Maybe she's just inquisitive, but it stood out a little bit that maybe they were explaining it to try and cover themselves because of some questions that people might have. But then you get the conversation about Dina and Ellie, and that Jesse knows that there's something going on between them. Says, I love her, but I don't love her in the same way you do. Also mentions that she would never turn down a drink, so I know she's pregnant. And that makes him even more focused and determined that let's find Tommy and then get out of here. That should be the main goal. And it speaks to Jesse's character in this episode. And it's why I feel quite bad for him later on when Ellie really goes off on him. But it speaks to his character that he is actually willing to give up Dina and let her be with Ellie. But also he wants to be a part of his child's life. And that's as it should be, but it does say something that it's like he's accepted that Dina and Ellie are together and that him and Dina probably will never be. So it definitely speaks to his character, I think. And then you have a scene when him and Ellie come into this place, this seemingly deserted place, but they stumble upon the wolves like kidnapping and threatening a boy who is from the other group. It appears from like the religious group, and Ellie wants to help him, but Jesse is like, again, it's not our fight, we can't get involved, this is too dangerous. And it's something Ellie brings up later on, because they end up leaving the boy at the mercy of this group. So you assume that probably he was killed at some point. And once again, it's very sort of murky, because maybe they should have helped them, but it would have been very risky because there's only two of them and potentially a lot more of the other group. But again, you can sympathise with Ellie's position in that scene. There's also a small scene with the Jeffrey Wright character, who is like the leader of the wolves, and another character, and they're talking about Abby, because I hadn't quite put together exactly what faction Abby was with. I wasn't sure if she had her own little faction, but she is part of the wolves. And what this scene does well is, and Jeffrey Wright does a good job in the scene, but it's a good scene just, again, hyping up Abby and her importance, and probably her importance moving forward in the story. Because he's almost talking about her in terms of her being this special one, having special abilities and talents. And they say they haven't seen her for quite a while now, so they're wondering if something has happened to her. And the other character in the scene is, there's a small bit of humour, because she makes this quip about, are you in love with her? Like, is that a thing? Are you trying to make it okay, you're like this older one, and almost like a breeding thing to make things kind of go on? But he just shrugs that off, and he says no, it's all about her talents, really, how important she is, and you believe him in the scene. It's very well sold in the scene. Like, you never watch the scene believing that he's in love with her. It's more about the mission and how important she is to the mission. So then the other character, I can't remember the woman's name, but she makes this blunt comment about, well, it looks like she's left us. It looks like she's fucked off, basically. So, but it's quite a nice little scene with Jeffrey Wright's character, who, again, I think we'll see more of next season. And then things really click into gear for the really sort of gripping, dramatic back half, because Ellie and Jesse hear a message over the radio, and it's someone who's in trouble, and Jesse is convinced it's Tommy. And they reach this point, and this is very much for the drama and the TV sort of storytelling and the dilemma of it, because Ellie then spots it's a big wheel, like a big Ferris wheel, and she's found out from Nora when she tortured her, then this is where Abby is. So they're conflicted on what they should do. Jesse naturally wants to go and save Tommy. Ellie says, you can't be 100% sure it is Tommy, but Jesse is pretty convinced. But naturally, she wants to go and get Abby. She's still got her mindset on revenge. So it's a great bit of drama. It's a great bit of conflict between the two. Visually, there's a lot of great stuff in this back half of the episode, because you've got dramatic storms, rains, that kind of thing around this like big wheel and this area, and then you've got very much going into the survival horror, but also this debate between Ellie and Jesse is really interesting, and Ellie clearly loses it and becomes unhinged and quite unfair towards Jesse in this scene, because Jesse says, I didn't vote for this. Back at the compound, I didn't vote for it because it wasn't what's best for the community, and Ellie screams, fuck the community. And I know some people are going to be quite critical of her, and have been, about being quite naive about maybe what Jesse says, because he says in this scene, whenever you go off on these plans, these missions, it's always for your own good. And you can see a desperation in this episode from Ellie, but there's no doubt about it, considering how young she is and what she's been through. And it's very understandable in many ways, but it's something which comes out in this episode, definitely. Like, she's definitely still mourning Joel and has been through a lot, so you have to put it in that context as well, and how young she is. But Jesse does come out of the scene very well, and Ellie throws some sharp jabs back about it, like, you're saying I'm selfish. Like, earlier on, you were willing to let a kid die because he wasn't part of your community, and that's pretty strong stuff. Again, she sort of has a little bit of a point with it, without doubt, although you can understand it about Jesse and his decision as well. But Jesse does take the high road by the end of the scene, and he doesn't try to stop her because he doesn't think that's the right way. She's made up her mind, and he says, well, I hope it works out for you, good luck. So they go their separate ways, and this is important because of setting something up for later on. But again, you get some good dramatic Ellie against the elements stuff, because she goes off quite half-cocked, and we see her like commandeer, I'm not sure you call it like a jet ski, something like that, because she has to travel across the water to get to the place. And yeah, the storm is just really bad, and she gets knocked into the water. She's lucky enough to like land on, like swim onto the shore. She's close enough. One of the weaker scenes, I think, is the next scene, because it just felt like it was there just to have a moment of Ellie being put in jeopardy briefly, but it was over so fast and simple, it didn't really feel like you needed it. And that is, she gets kidnapped by the religious group, and they're going to like tie her up and hang her because they don't trust her. They think she's a threat. They think she's a wolves, like a member of the wolves, And she quickly is like, no, I'm not a member, I'm not a threat, I'm just a stranger. And it's one of the darker moments in the scene is just the fact that the woman looks for the approval of a young kid, so it's obvious that this young kid is like the leader of this group, which is pretty freaky, and he just nods. He gives the okay to kill Ellie. And then they hear that something's happening at the village, and the village is in danger, so the woman makes the decision then to like, let's leave her, let's go and save the village. So it's over pretty fast, so there's not a lot of tension in that scene really. Like, I can see the point of the scene. I wonder if it's just one of those scenes that was in the game, so it felt like, okay, we're doing it because it's in the game and it's like another hurdle for Ellie, but it didn't really seem like it needed to be in there. Like, there was never enough of a reason for it, I didn't think. So that's probably one of the weaker scenes in the episode. So Ellie goes on her way anyway, and she gets back on the jet ski. She makes it across to the island and to the, as I said, this big wheel. She goes inside, starts looking around. Turns out Abby isn't there. Instead, you've got Owen and another character, another female who's in Abby's group. I didn't really catch her name. Seems like they're a couple, as we find something out later on. And Ellie wants them. She overhears them talking about Abby, and they seem to be debating this plan. And it seems that Owen is more on Abby's side, and the woman is very much, no, let's get out of here. And they've got this map, and Ellie seems to cotton on to they must know where she is because they've been talking about her. So she holds them up by gun and wants them to give her the map. And at one point, Owen's like, because he says to the girl, she's going to kill us anyway. And Ellie says, no, I won't, because I'm not like you. And given this kind of morality that Ellie has been going on, I believe her. In that moment, I believe that she is telling the truth. It's very much a Joel move, that he would probably just kill them anyway, even if he said otherwise. I don't think it's such an Ellie move. She only ends up killing them in the long run because Owen tries to pull a fast one. Like, he fakes her out that he's going to give her the map, and then she reacts when he goes for her and shoots him, and unfortunately the other woman gets caught in the crosshairs. And then it's revealed, and this is maybe the darkest scene of the episode from Ellie's point of view, but it's revealed that she is pregnant, and she is basically dying. She knows she's dying, so she tells Ellie, or asks Ellie, can you cut my baby out of me? And she appears to have enough knowledge where she says, I know how to do it. I know where you can make an incision. And in the end, this all goes horribly dark because Ellie, maybe in a panic and maybe thinking, okay, I'm going to respect her dying wishes here, she does do it. But of course, it was never going to work out for the baby because the baby needs to feed on the mother ultimately, and once the mother is dead and the baby comes out, and it's an unborn baby, it wasn't due to be born. So I think she just panicked in the moment, I guess, the mother. Like, maybe she was a little bit naive and maybe just thought ultimately it had a better chance this way, or maybe it was too traumatic for her to have the baby inside her as she died. I'm not sure what she was thinking. I guess maybe she just panicked, and Ellie panicked and wanted to respect her wishes as she was dying anyway. But yeah, it just leads to a very dark moment for Ellie, that she has to witness this and witness the baby dying. And then Tommy and Jesse come along. So once again, some payoff there, because Jesse seemed to go in a different direction earlier, but he does show up at a crucial moment with Tommy. And later on, when they get back to base, like, Tommy is saying, you know, they made their own decisions, that they have to live with it. And Ellie has the line about, but is it alright that Abby survived and they didn't? So again, she's really thinking strongly about this. Then in some ways, Abby is very much the villain of the piece when it comes to the group, not so much the rest of the group. So is that really fair? And Tommy just says, I guess you just have to live with it. I hope you can. And then we get what leads into the big cliffhanger for next season, because Abby burst into the place, and I think she's already shot Tommy off in the other room, because Jesse is in the other room with Ellie, and they have a nice little moment where she thanks him for coming back, and she calls his bluff when he's almost modest about, well, maybe it was Tommy's idea to come back, and she knows it wasn't. She knows it was Jesse's idea, and says, thank you, you're a good man. And then they hear the commotion from the other room, and Jesse also gets shocked as he's running through. Now, I thought he was dead. Maybe he's not, because when there's like an exchange later on, they're sort of talking like maybe he's still alive. But that did seem like a fatal shot to me. Whereas I think Tommy is just wounded. So Abby comes in guns a-blazing, believing then it was Tommy and Jesse who killed off her group. But Ellie has to stop them, saying, no, it wasn't them, it was me. So she does the brave thing in the scene. And she says, I know what happened. I know what Joel did, and it was wrong. That's actually another quite big part of the earlier scene at the start of the episode, is that she tells Dina that stuff as well for the first time. So that's, again, quite a big moment, Dina finding that out from Ellie. But yeah, she lays it all out, and she knows what went down, and she's very sorry. And Abby, this is just fueling her rage, though, because finding out that Ellie was the one who killed the rest of her people. Because Ellie apologises, says, I didn't mean it, I was just looking for you, and they got caught in the crosshairs. And then Abby shoots at her, and we cut to black, and for a moment there was such a long fade. I thought that was going to be the credits, and that was going to be the cliffhanger. In some ways it is the cliffhanger, apart from the fact that we then jump back to the past and we see Abby waking up in bed. She slowly gets up and she walks out, and it comes up on the screen, Seattle, day one. So, and it's a very impressive visual as well, like her standing over this whole city, and it's post all this stuff going down that we've seen this season, which has left the city in a much worse state. But it's a very different sort of city on day one that she's looking out upon. But yeah, that sets up next season, where it would appear as though Abby's going to become a bigger focus of the story, than she probably is going to become the main character, and we're going to see things from her point of view. And I guess that would naturally means we're going to get more of the wolf stuff and the other factions and things like that. So you're going to open up the world again. Obviously Ellie's still going to play a part. I don't believe that she's dead. Again, I don't know much about the games. I don't think they would just kill her off like that, but I'm assuming she's gonna be put on the back burner a little bit. It's gonna be more Abby's story, and then we're gonna build to Ellie at the end, and we'll come back to that point possibly at the end of season 3. So we'll see how that all plays out. But I did like the end of the episode. I thought it was very gripping. It's a shame we haven't seen more of Caitlin Denver, because I think she's been very good in the scenes they have been. But it'll probably be worth it when you see season 3 and her playing a much bigger part, because I do think she's very good as Abby, and I can't really get on board with the complaints about the casting. I think it's great casting. So there you have it. But yeah, that's The Last of Us, the finale of season 2, which overall, 1 or 2 nitpicks definitely, but overall I think has been another very strong and solid season. And there's just some question marks for me, like some question marks about, until you see the next part, until you see season 3 and the next part of the game, there's certain question marks and certain things with, again, maybe they could have done a bit more with certain characters, but I think it's been a very solid season pretty much throughout, and again has done some very interesting things with the characters, with the story. Because at one point it cuts back to Dina, because she's still like patrolling the area. I'm very interested to see more of her next season. Hopefully that will happen, because I think she's been a massive plus this season, and the chemistry has been very good with her and Ellie. And I think that was important. I think they had to fill the void of Pedro Pascal and his character being killed off. And I think that was a great way to do it, because that actress has brought a lot to the show, and I've definitely enjoyed the relationship with her and Ellie. And again, I'm a bit baffled about certain people on the internet saying they don't have chemistry, because I just can't see that. And it does seem to be coming from one particular toxic group. So I think you have to take some of that stuff with a grain of salt. But I think it is fair to say that Bella Ramsey is a more limited actress, and that she's good as Ellie, but when it comes to maybe the more emotional scenes, at times she's a little bit more limited. But I think that's why you do pair her up with this other character. Like, it's almost like Dina has taken the burden off Joel not being around so much this season. And I think that's been a very good choice, because that actress has brought a lot of personality, a lot of charisma. She's very good herself in like the more emotional scenes, and I think again just them being two different kinds of characters and bringing something different to each other makes for some satisfying scenes. So that's definitely been a big plus of the season. So anyway, that's The Last of Us, the season finale for season 2. Fingers crossed it won't be too long before season 3, maybe a couple of years realistically, but we'll have to wait and see how quickly they get rolling on things. But let me know what you think of season 2 overall as a season, and also what you thought about the finale in the comments below. Like and subscribe, share me out on social media, and you can support me on the channel membership. I'll put the link in the description to this video. Also, for just $1 a month, you can support me on patreon.com/boardnow. But thanks for listening, guys. Take care, keep watching TV, and I'll see you soon. Bye.